changes in the law, payoffs and the rip-offs and the things nobody saw. No matter if it's heroin, cocaine or hash, you got to carry weapons cause you always carry cash.
I hope everything's right. Can we prove it? Is there any documentation anywhere that you did this, or that this, even if it was a cold case and nobody was ever arrested for it, is there documentation that the robbery happened? You know, a newspaper article, something.
Yeah.
And because I'm telling them, it's not only my reputation on the line, it's your reputation on the line. And if you don't have credibility, you got nothing.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I insist that anybody I work with, that's the way we work.
That's good. That's good. Somebody had asked me, can you prove you knew so-and-so from your stories? And I answered on the air. I was like, yeah, I called his house from county jail. So that's pretty rock solid stuff right there. So let's pass this on. Go ahead, Mike. Go ahead, throw in there.
Carol Goodman's our mayor right now. Oscar Goodman was the mayor from 99 to 2011. He's also known as the mob lawyer. He actually represented Meyer Lansky, Nick Scarpo, Anthony Tony, Spolatro, Frank Lefty, Rosenthal. And I was just wondering if you ever had any contact with him.
Yes, in a couple of areas. First of all, when I first moved to Vegas, I wasn't old enough to collect my pension yet, my retirement. So I had to hustle around getting income. So I got a security job at City Hall when he was mayor. And I would escort him out to his car at night. Now, he wasn't there every night. He'd be at meetings or something. But the nights he was there, when he would leave for the day, I would walk him out to his car. We'd shoot the breeze a little bit. Never about his lawyering, more about the weather. But so I did talk to him in those situations. And when I started doing the Vegas Clark County Library had Mob Month. Every January was Mob Month. And of course, Oscar, both as mayor and then because of his past as a criminal defense lawyer, was in demand, to be part of the Mob Month stuff. So Mayor Goodman and I met then talking about the mob days, and he would be on the panels I had, and I also was collecting memorabilia. I wasn't collecting it, but people were contacting me. The Mob Museum was just in the process of being built. It was not yet open, and Oscar Goodman was on the board. So when I would come up with any artifacts that somebody wanted to donate to former mobsters or the sons or daughters or relatives of deceased mobsters, they would reach out to me sometimes and say, I've got a fedora so-and-so used to wear, you think the Mob Museum would want it? Or I've got a tie that, whatever it was. And then I would contact Oscar Goodman and ask if they would want the donation. And if so, I'd have it sent to me, then I'd deliver it to the mayor, and it would end up going in the Mob Museum.
He never explained any of the stories with you?
Not really. I know that it was kind of awkward because he and Frank Cullota hated each other's guts. And I was at the time writing books with Frank Cullota. So Oscar knew that. He never said anything to me about it. A couple of little things like, I understand the rat. He called him the rat.
Oh yeah,
the king rat.
Big on rats, right?
Rats. And in fact, one day one radio station they reached out to me. They said, "Can you get a hold of Cullota? We'd like to do an interview." So we set it up. Frank was going to be in town. We're going to be in Vegas. We went to the studio. And as soon as we walked in and they shut the door to the studio, there was, I think, 2 or 3 hosts or co-hosts to the show. But I knew we were in trouble because I saw on the table where the guest set a plate of cheese. And I says, a plate of cheese. Now, what could that mean?
A rat.
And it turned out these people Oscar was a regular contributor to their show. To their show, so they must have told her they had Cullota booked, and I don't know, I don't know what the conversation was. But anyway, we ended up with a plate of cheese out there, and I said, if they say anything, is Frank still had a pretty good temper, and I'm thinking, holy Christ, the last thing I want to do is get arrested here with some kind of a big fiasco. But they asked him a couple of questions that could have ticked him off, but he held his cool. He said, well, you'll have to ask Oscar about that, and he let it go. So I was relieved when we got out of there and there was no altercations. But yeah, Oscar and Frank were not exactly what you'd call buddies.
Did he like anybody?
Yeah.
Which one, Oscar or Frank?
Frank. I didn't know him that well. I mean, just from seeing him, but I didn't know him personally. But every time I see him, he was cursing somebody.
Yeah, Frank had, well, I'm trying to think of the best way to describe Frank. He was very wary of people. He thought that probably because of the environment that, he grew up in and lived in, but that everybody was trying to take advantage of it, that you couldn't really trust anybody. Everybody had an ulterior motive and was looking to capitalize somehow off of you or sabotage you or whatever it was. So he was very wary. He had to get to know you to really like you. And when I first met Frank, we set up a meeting because he wasn't active witness protection, but because he had been an FBI agent set the thing up, and I couldn't know the date or time, and it was really a bizarre thing. And I had to meet Frank in a hotel room in Vegas, and I was quite excited about it to begin with because I was looking at a chance maybe to work with him as far as a book went, and we hadn't written a book together yet, and I was wondering, he's street savvy. Frank didn't have any much of a formal education, but he was obviously had some street smarts, and I said, is he going to be able to sense that, I'd always been a law enforcement guy, that I don't think much of, him as a, robber and a burglar and blah, 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 and the hitman. And is that going to queer the deal? So I was apprehensive when I first met him face to face, that he would say, I can tell you don't like me, and we're not going any further with this. But we spent 2.5 hours in the hotel room, and we finally ended up making our deal to do the book on a handshake. And I'm driving home that day, and I started thinking, I was rehashing in my mind, what the meeting was consisted of. And I said, here's a guy that's been a criminal all his life, master thief, burglar, killer, and I just made a deal with him on a handshake. How smart was that? Shouldn't I have something in writing or whatever? But I didn't. I made the deal on a handshake, and of all the people, and I'm talking about a lot of different people. Like with Frank, I'll say I always knew where I stood. We agreed on a lot. Some things we didn't agree on, but we talked them out, and I always knew what was up. And as the years went by, it didn't happen overnight, but as the years went by, I trusted Frank as much as I trusted anybody, and I'd rather deal with Frank than I would most politicians.
It's funny you say that, Denny, because that's exactly what I felt. After going from mob guys, street guys, whatever, it didn't matter across the board. I did an internship at one Democrat office, and I did an internship in college at one Republican office. And after dealing with both, my general view was the mob was right when they said that politicians are pretty much the lowest form of whatever, just like General Patton once said about politicians, right? You remember that phrase, right?
Which one? I've heard a few of them.
Oh, the one where Patton said that something about politicians are the lowest form of life on earth. And then he said that the more out there liberal ones are the worst of the worst. But basically, he said all of them are, and
Yes.
one was slightly
Yes.
worse than the other. And I'll be honest with you, more street guys are more trustworthy than the politicians, because you're right, they will tell you generally where you stand with them. If they don't like it, they'll make it known they don't like it. Politicians, on the other hand, they have their finger in the wind. They've got the PR people and the consultants. They don't think for themselves. They have somebody do it. And yeah, with most other people, it's just not how it is. We deal with things as we individually interpret them, not how we're told that the public supposedly thinks, and then we got to copy that.
Absolutely. And I give Patton a thumbs up on that comment. And I'll tell you more and more, I've evolved in some of my attitudes over the years. There was a time where I was strictly, cop stuff and the thin blue line, and you didn't give a damn about how bad one of your colleagues might be. He was still a cop, and you had to defend him right to the end and all that. But the last couple of years, about 4 years now, I've been involved investigating cold cases, suspicious homicide and suspicious death cases. And I found that in some cases, you always hear, 99% of the cops are great. Well, I don't know what the percentage is. I'm sure the vast majority are.
Sure, absolutely.
But there are a few that probably should be in a different line of work. And right now, the way things are set up, they have total control. For the example, the release of records. We're talking about FOIA requests, and so forth. If a case is open, they're exempt from FOIA. So the case could be 50 or 60 years old, and I'm working a couple of them that are that old, and you can't get any records because, it's an open case. It's been sitting in a shelf somewhere collecting dust for 40 years.
Right.
And what it does, it gives them, now I can understand there are a lot of times when, yes, you don't want to jeopardize an investigation or compromise it by giving out information, that you don't want the general public, or you don't want the killer to know that you have. I understand that. But when you get some of these cases like this that are that old, I found they can also cover up for incompetence or malfeasance on the part of the police. So it gives, and they have total control over it. There's nothing you can do.
Right.
Hey, it's an open case. Go pound salt, brother. We're not giving you nothing. So I'm started a group called the Transparency Project, and our goal is to get federal legislation that require that in order to turn down or decline the release of records, the department, the police agency investigating not only has to prove the case is open, they got to prove it's active. They got to prove they're working it. If they're not working it, they have to give up the records.
That's good, because you're right. They can use that control over the flow of information for political motives. Like you said, if they want to cover up for past malfeasance, they don't want the department to quote unquote be embarrassed. And that's really a matter of opinion in and of itself. With me, I'm a full disclosure, sunlight is the best disinfectant type, to where I think departments look good when they do come out and say, hey, whatever X number of years ago, there was this issue. This is what we've done to fix it. I know others believe that not saying anything at all, they believe that keeps their public image up, whatever. But when I went to college, I had a similar epiphany, if you will. I had come from an environment where the cops are sort of your opponents, and there's this overall negative view of the police or the feds or whoever. And I took, I want to say 3 or 4 law classes, the undergrad law classes, judicial reasoning, and a couple of others. And as I saw these cases, studying them and whatnot, I saw that most of the time they were good, that, these conspiracies about what the police are doing are made up. And it's unfortunate because sometimes the FOIA thing, like what you're talking about, ties into this public perception. And if the police agencies had this perception of being more open, that maybe some of these negative conspiracy theories about what the cops do, or the other things, maybe that would start to dissipate a bit, if that makes sense.
Yeah, the people have to have confidence in the government and the governmental agencies. You got to feel you can trust them. You got to say, when they tell me something, it's the truth. And when you have this secrecy and stalling and foot dragging, and well, we'd love to tell you, but we can't. I mean, how stupid do they think we are?
Right.
That everybody's going to buy into that. When people stonewall me for no good reason, I become very, very suspicious. What is there? Maybe there's nothing, but still you start thinking.
Right.
And if you don't have confidence in the system and then the agencies administering the system, you got problems.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. When you were in, with the things you've looked into with Vegas or some of the other places, were there any ties to the LA family, or were any of I've heard that sometimes California-based gangsters or mobsters, whether they were from here or whether they showed up from Chicago or New York, some of them had some ties to the casino too.
Yeah, in fact, what I didn't really learn until, well, I say recently, but a few years ago, was part of Spilatro's thing. Now, Spilatro was a very ambitious guy. He wanted to be like a Don. He wanted, and he was feathering his own nest in addition to Chicago's interest. But one of his things, he was expanding, reaching out, wanting to do with California. He wanted California to be part of his realm, if you will. And so he was reaching out to California. And I guess at the time they said that the California mob wasn't that big or strong or powerful, and that he was in a position to kind of take it over and not move there, but run it. Have it be the voice, be the boss.
Right.
And so he was into that, and I don't know how far he got with it. I understand he did have some relationships that he cultivated and was working with some of the California people.
Speaking of that, Denny, when I did a search for a different project, and I actually found a YouTube video from, I want to say 84, maybe earlier, but it was a newscast from the LA local market, NBC, yes, one of them. And they did a quick story on Spilatro, and they characterized him as a Los Angeles gangster. And
really?
Yeah, and I think that if I remember right, it was something where the LAPD or somebody, one of the California agencies, suspected him of a crime in LA or some crimes, I'm sure, with him. And I think they even touched on, that the influence that the guys like him were doing. If I find it, I will send you an email with it so you can take a look at it.
I love that.
Yeah, it was from a local LA broadcast, and Spilatro was brought up as though he was, from an LA area guy now,
Yeah, well, like I say, it must be he did have some influence then.
Yeah, for sure. So aside from him, were there any other Chicago guys that you're aware of that were operating in California, Southern California, any of that?
I did, and I can't think of the names right offhand, but I did know of two that, in fact, Cullota told me that Tony sent a couple of these guys to California to live and to do jobs, to do some work in California. And one of them, I believe, now I could be wrong on this, so I'm a little hesitant to give the name, but I think it was a guy named Joey Hansen. And that he had done quite a bit of work for Tony, and Tony assigned him to move into LA. Now, I don't know the details after that or what he did there, whether he was just going to maybe help people think of Tony, convince them that Tony was the man, I don't know exactly what happened, but he was a Spilatro guy, and he did go to California.
Yeah, yeah. You guys, Hootie, Mike.
Well, before we let Mr. Griffin go and we do the final thought, Mr. Griffin, would you like to? We got some information to release today, and if you'd like to let the audience and my co-host know what we got going on next. Go
Yes,
right
I
ahead.
sure, absolutely. Hootie and I have talked, and he has what, in my opinion, is a tremendous story to tell about his life and his experiences. And I've agreed to work with him, to partner up with him to write a book to tell his story. And we just talked about it today. As a matter of fact, it's fresh off the press, if you will. And I'm very excited about it.
And I thank Mr. Griffin.
That's awesome.
It's big news for me. Little guy coming from Mozone Park and 101st Avenue. It's a great adventure. I've been looking for about a year now into authors and maybe what I wanted to do with it. And me and Mr. Griffin spoke about a week ago. We kind of knew what the idea was. He wanted to meet me. I wanted to meet him. I looked into his writing. I already knew about Andrew's book. And the casino thing is actually solidified it. And then speaking to him, he's a gentleman, Mr. Griffin. And I love the way he writes, and I think that he's going to get my story right, and I'm not looking to sell my soul. I mean, Mr. Griffin spoke about this. I want the right story, the true story, my story. I don't want to tell anybody else's story. I don't want no secondhand stuff. It's all going to be straight, and we're going to get into it further, but this is a new project, and I'm thankful to Mr. Griffin. I want to thank him here on the show. I'm my co-host as well. Everything started moving really fast. And I'll have another announcement to make when we do Hootie's Thought. We let Mr. Griffin go. And I just wanted to, again, with all our fans, I wanted to thank everybody that signs on and subscribes. And, you know, this is just the beginning. We're going to come out with the facts and the truth. And again, I'd like to take the time to thank Mr. Griffin for taking me on. And I think we're going to have a great time writing this and touring with it and enjoying it. And I think we're gonna put out a good piece of work here. Thank you.
Thank you, Hootie. I'm glad you thought of me, and I'm looking forward to getting started.
Thank you, Mr. And you'll definitely be back on as a guest. I appreciate you coming on and giving us your knowledge on everything. And we'll talk soon.
Okay, thank you, and thanks, guys. Pleasure to meet you, Mike and Jeff. Thank you.
Very nice to meet you
so
too.
much, Denny. We'll definitely talk some more too. Okay.
Okay, thanks. Best of luck to you.
Thank you.
And Mr. Griffin.
Bye-bye.
All right. So we got big things coming up. That was something I wanted Mr. Griffin to let you guys know. We were talking for about a week or so, and you know, I've been looking for about a year, and it worked out. You know, we talked. I liked him. He liked my story. I liked his story. I like what he's done. And there's a book in motion, guys.